The dragon floated in the space between dimensions, watching the universe unfold before her ancient eyes. Velcia had seen stars born and die. She had watched civilizations rise from dust and return to it. For 10,000 years, she had observed everything with calm detachment. Nothing surprised her anymore. Nothing moved her. She was simply a witness to the eternal dance of existence. Today, she watched a small human colony world called New Busan. The planet orbited a yellow star in what humans called the Outer Rim. It was a quiet place, home to about 50,000 humans who had left Earth 3 generations ago to build a new life among the stars. They grew food, raised children, and dreamed of peace. Velcia found humans curious. They were so young as a species, barely 200 years into space travel, yet they spread across the galaxy with surprising speed. The Vrothian fleet arrived without warning. Velcia observed as 15 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel above New Busan. The Vrothians were insectoid creatures, tall and armored, with minds as cold as the void. Their empire stretched across 100 worlds, built on conquest and slavery. They believed themselves superior to all other species. Humans, in their view, were nothing more than soft, weak creatures who had gotten lucky with technology. The attack began at dawn. Plasma fire rained from the sky, turning the colony's farming districts into ash. The humans tried to fight back with their small defense force, but they were overwhelmed in minutes. Velcia watched families run for the evacuation shelters. She watched fathers die protecting their children. She watched mothers clutch infants as buildings collapsed around them. She watched it all with the same calm she had maintained for millennia. This was simply how the universe worked. The strong consumed the weak. It had always been this way. Then she noticed the girl. Minji was 12 years old, small for her age, with dark hair pulled into a ponytail. She wore a simple blue dress that her mother had made for her birthday last month. She was running through the smoke-filled streets, not toward the shelters, but toward a damaged building where 3 younger children were trapped. Velcia focused her attention on the child. Why was she running toward danger instead of away from it? Minji reached the building and began pulling debris away from the entrance. Her hands bled as she worked, but she didn't stop. She freed the children one by one and pushed them toward the shelter. The last child, a boy of maybe 5, was too scared to move. Minji picked him up even though he was almost as big as she was and carried him. A Vrothian soldier spotted her. The creature raised its weapon. Velcia expected the child to die right there. But something happened that made the ancient dragon pause. A human man, Minji's father Do-hyun, threw himself between his daughter and the weapon. The plasma blast tore through him instantly. He fell without a sound. Minji screamed, but she didn't stop running. She got the boy to safety, then turned back for her father's body. Her mother Sora appeared from the smoke, grabbing Minji's arm. They argued for precious seconds while death fell from the sky around them. Finally, Sora dragged her daughter toward the shelters. They almost made it. A nearby explosion threw them both to the ground. When the smoke cleared, Sora wasn't moving. A piece of metal had pierced her chest. Minji crawled to her mother, crying, begging her to get up. Sora touched her daughter's face with a bloody hand. Her lips moved, saying something Velcia couldn't hear across the dimensional barrier. Then she died. Minji sat there, holding her mother's body, tears cutting clean lines through the ash on her face. The Vrothian soldiers found her like that. They pulled her away from her mother's corpse and bound her hands with electronic restraints. Minji fought them, kicking and biting, until one of them hit her hard enough to make her stop. They threw her into a transport ship with 24 other captured humans. Velcia watched as the transport lifted off, leaving the burning colony behind. Most of New Busan's population was dead. The few survivors were scattered in the wilderness, hiding from patrols. The dragon followed the transport to the Vrothian flagship, a massive vessel called the Absolute Victory. She could move through dimensions easily, observing without being seen. The captives were separated into groups. Most were adults taken for slave labor. Minji and 3 other children were taken to a different section of the ship. They were brought before Lord Kesethrak, the fleet commander. He was larger than the other Vrothians, his carapace decorated with symbols of rank and conquest. His compound eyes reflected no mercy, no compassion, nothing remotely human in their alien depths. He looked at the children the way a scientist might look at insects under glass. Through a translation device, his voice came out harsh and clicking. "You will tell me where the human refugee fleet has gone," he said. Your colony sent evacuation ships 3 days ago. They carry civilians and military personnel. Where did they go? The children said nothing. They were terrified, crying, holding each other. Kethrak moved closer to Minji. You are the oldest. You have a neural implant for school lessons. You accessed the evacuation data. We detected it. Where are the ships? Minji looked up at the towering alien creature. Her face was still dirty with ash, still streaked with dried tears. But her eyes were steady. I don't know, she said quietly. You are lying, Kethrak replied. Human children cannot deceive without physical signs. Your heart rate increased. Your skin temperature changed. You know where they went? I don't know, Minji said again. Kethrak made a gesture. One of his soldiers grabbed the youngest child, a 6-year-old boy, and dragged him forward. Perhaps you need motivation, the commander said. Minji's eyes widened. No, please, tell me where the ships went. Felshaw watched from her dimensional perch. She had seen this kind of scene play out countless times across the millennia. Torture and coercion were common tools of war. Usually the victims broke quickly. Humans, despite their resilience, were still creatures of flesh and pain. They had limits, but something made her keep watching. Something about the way Minji straightened her back, even though she was shaking. Something about the way she looked the commander in his alien eyes. I don't know, Minji said for the 3rd time. Kethrak released the boy. Take her to the interrogation chamber, he ordered. We will extract the information properly. The rest of these juveniles are useless. Space them, they dragged Minji away. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just watched the other children with tears running down her face, mouthing the words, I'm sorry. Velsha decided to keep observing. For the first time in 1,000 years, she felt something like curiosity. What would this small human do? How long would she last? What made her species special enough to spread so far despite being so young and weak? She was about to find out. The interrogation chamber was a cold, sterile room deep inside the Vrothian flagship. Metal walls reflected harsh white light from panels overhead. In the center of the room stood a chair designed for human physiology. Equipped with restraints and various instruments Velsha recognized from her long observation of warfare. Some civilizations called such places necessary evils. Others called them what they truly were, torture chambers. They strapped Minji into the chair. Her wrists and ankles were locked down with magnetic clamps. A neural interface crown was lowered onto her head, its probes extending to make contact with her skull. The device could read thoughts, extract memories, and cause precise amounts of pain directly to the nervous system. It was efficient. The Vrothians prided themselves on efficiency. Lord Kethrak entered with 2 technicians. He stood before the small human girl, his alien form towering over her. This does not need to be difficult, he said through the translator. Your implant contains the navigation data. We will extract it. The only question is how much pain you will endure first. Cooperation will result in a quick death. Resistance will make the process longer. Minji said nothing. Her jaw was clenched, her eyes fixed on a point on the wall behind the commander. She was terrified. Velsha could see her elevated heart rate through thermal imaging, could sense the adrenaline flooding her young body, but she remained silent. Kethrak gestured to his technicians. Begin level 1 extraction. The neural crown activated. Minji's body went rigid as electricity coursed through her nervous system. It wasn't enough to cause permanent damage, just enough to hurt. A lot. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, her fingers clawing at the armrests. The process lasted for 30 seconds, then stopped. Where did the refugee fleet go? Kethrak asked. Minji gasped for air. Sweat already covered her face. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I don't. Level 2, the commander ordered. This time the pain was worse. The crown stimulated pain receptors directly, making her brain think her body was burning. Minji did scream now, a sound that echoed off the metal walls. Velsha watched without expression. She had witnessed suffering on scales that would break mortal minds. One child's pain was nothing compared to the death of civilizations, the genocide of entire species. This was simply the way of things, yet she didn't look away. The torture continued. Minutes stretched into hours. The Vrothians were methodical, increasing the intensity gradually. They wanted the information intact, and destroying Minji's mind would be counterproductive. Between sessions, they gave her water to keep her conscious. They asked the same questions over and over. Minji stopped screaming after the first hour. She didn't have the energy left. Instead, she whimpered and gasped, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her nose was bleeding, her eyes were bloodshot, but she didn't answer their questions. "This is irrational," Kethrak said more to himself than to Minji. "You are a juvenile. Self-preservation should override other concerns. Why do you protect information? The refugee fleet means nothing to you personally." Minji's head hung forward, her dark hair covering her face. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet the translator almost didn't pick it up. 3,000 children? What? 3,000 children? On those ships, Minji whispered. Babies. Kids like me. They're scared. They lost their families. If you find them, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood. If the Vrothians found the refugee fleet, those 3,000 children would die, or worse, become slaves for the rest of their lives. Kethrak studied the small human with something resembling curiosity. You endure this for strangers? You do not even know these other juveniles? Doesn't matter, Minji said. They're human, they're kids. Someone has to increase to level 5, the commander ordered. Perhaps we have been too gentle. Level 5 was not gentle. Velsha watched as Minji's body convulsed, every muscle contracting at once. Blood vessels burst in her eyes. Her fingernails cracked as she clawed at the armrests. The scream that came from her throat didn't sound human anymore. It went on for 2 full minutes. When it stopped, Minji slumped in the chair. She was still conscious, but barely. Her breathing was shallow and rapid. The monitors showed her body going into shock. Stabilize her, Kethrak ordered. We cannot extract the data if she dies. The technicians injected her with stimulants and medical nanites. Her vital signs strengthened slightly. Kethrak waited 5 minutes, then began again. Where did the fleet go? Minji's lips moved. The translator leaned closer. She was singing. It was barely audible, more breath than voice, but it was definitely singing. A simple melody, the kind a mother might sing to a child before sleep. Velsha recognized it as a human lullaby, something about stars and dreams and being safe. Kethrak tilted his head, confused. What is she doing? It appears to be a coping mechanism, one technician said. Humans sometimes retreat into comforting memories when facing extreme stress. Make her stop. Resume extraction. They tortured her for 3 more hours. Between sessions, Minji kept singing that lullaby. Sometimes she could only mouth the words. Sometimes only a few notes came out. But she didn't stop. The song had been her mother's favorite, the one Sora had sung when Minji had nightmares or was sick. Now, with her mother dead and her father dead and her whole world burned to ash, this song was all she had left. Velsha found herself listening to the melody. It was simple, nothing special, yet the child clung to it like a lifeline. The dragon had heard millions of songs across the ages, great symphonies composed by civilizations long dead, beautiful alien harmonies that could make stars weep. This lullaby was nothing compared to those, so why couldn't she stop listening? Her neural implant has a security protocol, one technician reported. She is actively deleting the navigation data. It is fragmenting. We need to extract it now or it will be lost. Kethrak's mandibles clicked in frustration. Maximum extraction. Override her neural pathways. Get the data before she destroys it. Commander, that level will likely kill her. Then we will extract it from her corpse. Do it. They activated the neural crown at full power. Minji's body went rigid one final time. Blood ran from her nose, her ears, her eyes. The song stopped. The monitors began alarming. Her heart rate spiked, then started to slow. But in those final moments, Velsha saw something impossible. She saw Minji smile. The girl had managed to move one finger to a control interface on the chair's armrest. Nobody had noticed because everyone was focused on her vital signs. With her last bit of consciousness, with her brain dying from the neural overload, Minji activated her implant's final function, an emergency broadcast. Everything in her implant's memory dumped into a quantum transmission. Not just the navigation data that had already been deleted, but everything else. School lessons, personal messages, and most importantly, the last 6 hours of sensory recordings. Everything she had seen and felt and heard in this torture chamber was compressed into a data burst and fired into space at faster than light speed. The Vrothians didn't notice. Their equipment was designed to prevent incoming signals, not outgoing ones. They assumed a child wouldn't have the technical knowledge or the opportunity to send anything. They were wrong. At 1447 station time, Minji died. Her heart stopped. Her brain ceased functioning. The monitors flatlined. The song ended. Kesethrak stared at the dead child. Extract her implant. Download everything directly. The technicians worked quickly, surgically removing the neural implant from Minji's skull. They plugged it into their systems and began the download. Commander, one of them said after a moment, the navigation data is corrupted. She deleted it successfully. What? The data is gone. All we have is her personal memories and educational files. Nothing about the fleet location. Kesethrak was silent for a long moment. Then he backhanded the technician hard enough to crack the creature's carapace. She was a juvenile. How did she resist for 6 hours? How did she successfully delete military data while being tortured? Nobody had an answer. Dispose of the body, Kesethrak ordered. Prepare for the next interrogation. We captured 37 adult humans. One of them must know something. They unstrapped Minji's small corpse from the chair and carried it to the waste disposal. In space, nobody would ever find it. She would drift forever in the dark. Velsha watched them throw the child away like garbage. She felt something unfamiliar stirring in her ancient heart. She had witnessed countless deaths across 10,000 years. Why did this one feel different? Then she noticed something the Vrothians had missed. When Minji activated her implant's broadcast, it had been aimed at a specific network, the human emergency frequency. Every human ship, every human colony, every human settlement in this sector would have received it. They would know what happened here. Velsha checked the timestamps. Minji had died at 1447. She pulled back her dimensional sight, expanding her awareness across light years of space. It was 1501 now. 14 minutes had passed. The dragon decided to keep watching. She wanted to see what humans would do when they learned how this child had died. Velsha expanded her awareness across human space. Her ancient consciousness could perceive multiple locations simultaneously, watching events unfold in real time across dozens of light years. This was a simple task for a being who had observed the universe for 10 millennia. She wanted to see how humans would react to the death of one child. The broadcast reached the first human vessel at 1452, 5 minutes after Minji's death. It was a cargo freighter called the Morning Star, hauling grain between colonies. The captain, a woman named Hyeron, was reviewing supply manifests when the emergency transmission came through. She almost ignored it, assuming it was a system error. Emergency broadcasts were rare but usually meant pirates or natural disasters. Then she opened the file and saw the sensory recording. Hyeron watched 6 hours of torture, compressed into a 5-minute highlight. She saw Minji's face, heard her screams, watched her sing that lullaby even as she died. The recording ended with the girl's final heartbeat, her last thought captured by the neural implant. I hope they got away safe. The captain sat frozen in her chair for a full minute. Then she vomited. Then she started crying. Then she got angry. She forwarded the transmission to every contact in her network and set course for the nearest human military station. Her ship wasn't armed. She was a civilian. But that didn't matter anymore. At 1458, the transmission reached the human destroyer Righteous Fury. Captain Hyun was running patrol drills when his communications officer started shouting. Within minutes, every crew member had seen the recording. Hyun watched it 3 times, his jaw clenched tighter with each viewing. He was a career military officer with 20 years of service. He had seen combat. He had lost friends. But this was different. This was a child. He activated his ship's communication array and sent a priority message to Fleet Command. Then he changed course, heading toward the last known position of the Vrothian flagship. His ship was designed for patrol work, lightly armed, no match for a Vrothian capital ship. His crew knew this. Nobody objected. At 1503, the transmission reached New Sol, a major human colony with 2 million inhabitants. The planetary governor, a man named Jinho, received it directly from military intelligence. He watched the recording in his office, alone. When it finished, he sat in silence for 5 minutes. Then he activated the emergency broadcast system. Every screen on the planet showed Minji's face, a school photo from a year ago, smiling and alive. Jinho's voice came through every speaker. People of New Sol. 16 hours ago, the Vrothian Empire attacked the colony of New Busan. They killed 42,000 humans. Among the dead was this child, Minji. She was 12 years old. She loved music and wanted to be a teacher. She died protecting 3,000 refugee children who escaped on evacuation ships. She was tortured for 6 hours. She never broke. She saved those children. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. We are suspending all trade with Vrothian-aligned species. We are recalling all diplomatic personnel. We are converting our orbital shipyards to military production. And we are sending every combat-capable vessel to join the fleet. This is not a request. This is not a debate. This is what we are doing. At 15:12, the transmission reached Admiral Yunji at fleet headquarters. She was 70 years old, a veteran of 3 minor conflicts, known for her calm, strategic thinking. She watched the recording in her private quarters. When it ended, she didn't move for several minutes. Then she called an emergency meeting of the Joint Military Council. I am invoking Total War Protocol, she announced without preamble. This has never been used in human history. I am using it now. Total War Protocol meant every human military asset in the galaxy would be mobilized. Reserve ships would be activated. Civilian vessels would be conscripted. Every colony would contribute forces. It meant humanity was going to war not for territory or resources, but for vengeance. Admiral, that requires unanimous council approval, one general said. Yunji pulled up the recording. Watch this. Then vote, the council watched. The vote was unanimous. It took 4 minutes. At 15:19, the transmission reached the refugee fleet that Minji had died protecting. 3,000 children and 800 adults had escaped New Busan on 5 ships. They were hiding in an asteroid field, afraid to move, unsure if they were being hunted. When they received the broadcast, the fleet commander, a former teacher named Bora, gathered everyone in the main transport's cargo hold. The children watched the recording. Many of them had known Minji. They had played with her at school, eaten lunch with her, celebrated birthdays together. Now they watched her die to keep them safe. The youngest ones didn't fully understand. The older ones understood too well. They cried. They held each other. And they understood the gift she had given them. Because of her, you are alive, Bora told them quietly. Because she was brave, you get to grow up. You get to have lives. You get to have futures. Remember her. Remember what she did. At 15:23, exactly 36 minutes after Minji's death, something extraordinary began to happen. Belsha observed a phenomenon she had never witnessed in 10,000 years. Humanity unified, not politically. Humans were too fractious for that, spread across too many colonies with too many different governments, but they unified in purpose, in grief. In rage across 200 colonized worlds, humans stopped what they were doing. Factories paused. Schools dismissed. Offices closed. For 1 hour, everything went silent. It wasn't planned. It wasn't organized. It simply happened. 200 worlds, 40 billion humans, stopping simultaneously to acknowledge one child's death. Then they started moving. Civilian ships changed course toward military rendezvous points. Merchant captains volunteered their vessels for logistic support. Private yachts belonging to wealthy colonists were stripped of luxury fittings and equipped with weapons. On industrial worlds, factories retooled to build military hardware. On agricultural worlds, food production was increased and stockpiled for fleet supply. On Earth, the human homeworld, 12 billion people watched the recording. The planet's 3 governments had been arguing about the Vrothian situation for weeks, unable to agree on a unified response. Now protesters filled the streets of every major city, not demanding action, but preparing for it. Military recruiting stations were overwhelmed. Every branch of service exceeded their recruitment goals by 300% in 6 hours. Belshaw watched it all with growing fascination. This wasn't normal warfare. This wasn't politics or strategy. This was something primal, something she had seen hints of in other species, but never at this scale. At 15:45, the first volunteer militia fleet launched from the colonies nearest to Vrothian space. 23 civilian ships armed with whatever weapons their crews could install, moving toward the enemy. They had no training. They had no support. They had grief and anger, and a dead child's face burned into their memories. At 16:01, the first regular military fleet reached combat readiness. Admiral Yunji's flagship, the Indomitable, led a force of 37 warships toward the last known position of the Vrothian fleet that had destroyed New Busan. The admiral had ordered her ships to paint something on their hulls before departure. 2 words in human languages from across Earth. Remember Minji. At 1615, human diplomatic channels across the galaxy went silent. Ambassadors to neutral worlds delivered identical messages. Humanity was withdrawing from all treaties and agreements with any species that maintained relations with the Vrothian Empire. No negotiation, no discussion. Cooperation was simple. You sided with humanity or you were an enemy. Several species immediately chose humanity. They had seen the recording. They had children too. At 1630, the human news networks were broadcasting war coverage, not debates about whether to fight, but logistics updates on fleet movements. Retired military officers explained tactics. Historians compared the mobilization to ancient wars on Earth. Everyone agreed this was unprecedented. We're not fighting for territory, one analyst said. We're not fighting for resources or political power. We're fighting because they tortured a child, and humanity doesn't forgive that. At 17, the first combat engagement occurred. A Vrothian patrol encountered one of the volunteer militia ships, a converted cargo hauler called Minji's Voice. The Vrothian captain demanded surrender. The militia captain, a former accountant named Tai Young, responded by ramming the Vrothian corvette at full speed. Both ships were destroyed. Velsha watched the debris scatter across space. Suicide attacks were not unusual in warfare. What was unusual was what happened next. 3 more militia ships arrived and recovered Minji's Voice's black box recorder. They broadcast Taeyong's last words to the fleet. For the girl. For all of them. It became a battle cry. For the girl. At 1715, human cyber warfare specialists launched coordinated attacks on Vrothian military networks. They didn't steal strategic information. They did something else. They flooded every Vrothian communication channel with Minji's recording. Every ship. Every station. Every colony. The Vrothians couldn't stop it. Their soldiers kept seeing what their commander had done to one human child. Some Vrothian vessels reported discipline problems. Soldiers questioning orders. Lower-ranking officers expressing doubt. The Vrothian species lacked human empathy, but they weren't stupid. They could calculate. If humans responded this way to one child's death, what would they do if the war continued? At 1730, a Captain Hyun stood on the bridge of the Righteous Fury, watching the tactical display as more ships appeared on sensors. His destroyer had been the first to change course toward Vrothian space, but he was far from alone now. 30 vessels had joined him in the past hour. More were coming. They weren't all military ships. A mining vessel called Second Chance had pulled alongside, its cargo holds emptied and filled with improvised missile racks. A passenger liner named Bright Future had evacuated its tourists at the nearest station and mounted kinetic cannons on its observation decks. Even a scientific research ship called Discovery had joined, its scientists hastily converting survey drones into explosive projectiles. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Fleet Command," his communications officer said. "Admiral Yunji wants to speak with you directly." Hyun straightened his uniform. "Put her through." The admiral's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but determined. "Captain Hyun, you left your patrol zone without authorization. Technically, that's desertion." "Yes, Admiral. I accept full responsibility." "Good. Because I'm putting you in command of Vanguard Group 7. You'll have 53 ships under your authority. Your mission is to locate and engage any Vrothian vessels between here and the absolute victory. Clear the path for the main fleet." Hyun felt his chest tighten. "Admiral, most of these ships are civilian volunteers. They're not trained for coordinated combat." "I know. Brief them on basic tactics. Keep them alive if you can. But don't slow down. The Vrothians tortured that child for 6 hours. We're going to find them in less than 6 days. Understood?" "Understood, Admiral. And Captain? The whole galaxy is watching. Show them what happens when you hurt our children." The transmission ended. Hyun looked at his tactical officer, a young woman named Ji-won. "You heard the Admiral. We have a fleet to organize. Let's get to work." Across human space, similar conversations were happening on thousands of ships. Admiral Eunji had divided the responding forces into battle groups, each with a specific objective. Some would hunt Vrothian patrols. Others would escort supply ships. The largest groups would converge on the absolute victory for the final confrontation. But something else was happening that no military planner had ordered or expected. Human civilians were organizing themselves. On the colony world of New Jeju, a programmer named Minho created a database to track every Vrothian war crime reported in Minji's broadcast and other intelligence. Within hours, thousands of volunteers were contributing data, cross-referencing reports, building detailed evidence files. They called it the Memory Project. Every victim would be documented. Every crime would be recorded. When the war ended, there would be trials. On Luna, Earth's moon, an engineer named Hana designed a new type of missile specifically for fighting Vrothian shields. She published the designs openly on the network. Within 6 hours, 17 factories across human space were producing them. She didn't ask for payment. She just wanted to help. On the mining colony of New Gwangju, a retired teacher named Sangho organized a children's message project. Young humans recorded short videos saying simple things. "We remember Minji. We won't forget. Thank you for saving them." These messages were compiled and broadcast on every channel, public and military. Soldiers watched them before going into battle. It reminded them why they were fighting. Velsha observed all of this with growing fascination. She had seen wars before. She had witnessed species unite against common enemies, but she had never seen anything like this. The humans weren't just fighting. They were building something, a shared identity forged from shared grief. Lord Kesethrak was beginning to realize he had made a mistake. On the bridge of the absolute victory, he reviewed the latest intelligence reports with increasing concern. Human fleet movements were unprecedented. They were mobilizing forces from across their territory, converging on his position. His tactical officers estimated the human force would outnumber his fleet by at least 3-1. "We should retreat to Vrothian core territory," his second-in-command suggested. "Consolidate with the main battle fleet." "No," Kesethrak said. "That would show weakness. We are the superior species. We will not flee from humans." "Commander, they are broadcasting the interrogation footage across all channels. Some of our vessels are experiencing psychological difficulties." "Explain." "The younger soldiers are disturbed by the recording. They question the necessity of the juvenile's death. Some have requested transfers." Kesethrak's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Discipline them. We are at war. Personal feelings are irrelevant." But the problems continued. 2 Vrothian ships defected, their crews claiming they would not fight for a commander who tortured children. 3 more ships reported to being unfit for combat due to crew refusals. It was unprecedented in Vrothian military history. The Vrothian High Command sent new orders. Avoid human forces when possible. Do not engage unless victory is certain. Prepare for diplomatic negotiations. Kesethrak read the orders and felt something he had rarely experienced: fear. His superiors were abandoning him. He had won a small tactical victory by destroying New Busan, but in doing so, he had triggered something much larger. 6 days after Minji's death, the human fleet arrived. Velsha watched from her dimensional perch as 437 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a coordinated formation. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled. Admiral Yunji's flagship led the center. Captain Hyun's vanguard protected the flanks. Behind them came waves of support vessels, medical ships, supply carriers, and more combat ships than the Vrothians had believed humans possessed. Every ship bore the same marking: "Remember Minji." The Vrothian fleet tried to run. They activated their faster-than-light drives, attempting to escape before the humans could engage. But the humans had planned for this. Specialized ships created a disruption field, preventing faster-than-light travel in a massive area of space. The Vrothians were trapped. "All ships, this is Admiral Yunji," the message broadcast across all channels. "Vrothian vessels, you have one opportunity to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. You will be taken into custody and face trial for war crimes. This is your only warning." Kesethrak's response was defiant. "We are the Vrothian Empire. We do not surrender to inferior species. Come and face us if you dare." "Acknowledged," Admiral Yunji said calmly. "Remember, Minji, all ships engage." The battle lasted 43 minutes. The humans fought with cold precision. No unnecessary risks, no heroic charges. They had overwhelming numerical superiority, and they used it efficiently. Vrothian shields failed under concentrated fire. Vrothian ships attempting to break through the disruption field were destroyed before they could escape. Vrothian fighters launched and were swept away by human interceptors. Velsha observed the tactical brilliance of the attack. The humans fought like they had been planning this for years, not days. Every move was calculated. Every shot was placed with purpose. They weren't angry warriors seeking revenge. They were executioners doing a necessary job. The Absolute Victory tried to fight. Its heavy weapons tore through 2 human destroyers, killing 800 sailors. But for every ship it destroyed, 10 more took its place. Human missiles overwhelmed its shields. Human boarding pods attached to its hull like parasites. Human marines breached its corridors. Lord Kesethrak gathered his command staff in the central bridge, preparing for a last stand. He expected the humans to kill him quickly, to execute him in revenge for the child's death. He was wrong. The human marines moved through the ship methodically, stunning Vrothian soldiers instead of killing them when possible. They secured the torture chamber where Minji had died. They recovered data from the ship's computers. They documented everything with military precision. When they reached the bridge, Captain Jiwon led the assault team. She was the one who had served on Captain Hyun's ship. Promoted for her performance during the advance, she entered the bridge with 20 Marines, weapons ready. Kesthrak stood tall, his carapace scarred from plasma burns. "Kill me quickly, human. I accept defeat with honor." "No," Jiwon said quietly. "You don't get a quick death. You don't get honor. You're going to stand trial. You're going to face the families of everyone you killed. You're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell, thinking about what you did to that girl. That's your punishment." They took him alive. Across the battlefield, the same thing was happening. Human forces were accepting surrenders, taking prisoners, securing evidence. This wasn't a massacre. It was an arrest. By the end of the day, the entire Vrothian fleet was captured or destroyed. Human casualties were significant. 3,000 dead, 7,000 wounded. But they had won decisively. More importantly, they had captured Kesthrak and his entire command staff. Admiral Yunji addressed the combined fleet from her flagship. "This battle is over, but the war continues. We will pursue every Vrothian vessel that participated in the attack on New Busan. We will find them all, and we will bring them to justice. For Minji. For all of them." The fleet responded as one. For Minji. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Other species watched humanity's response with Velsha, had watched the war unfold for 6 months. She had observed humanity's rise from a minor species to a galactic power. She had seen them establish laws, create alliances, and force species that had existed for millennia to recognize their strength. It was fascinating. It was historic. And according to the ancient laws she lived by, it was none of her business. The dragon existed in the space between dimensions, a realm where time and distance meant little. She was one of the eternal beings, creatures so old and powerful that most species had forgotten they existed. The eternal beings had one sacred rule: never interfere with mortal affairs. They could watch. They could observe. They could learn. But they could never act. Velsha had followed this rule for 10,000 years. She had watched species destroy themselves. She had seen civilizations reach for greatness and fall short. She had observed beauty and horror in equal measure, always from a distance, always as a witness. Her neutrality was absolute, until now. 3 months after the battle at the Absolute Victory, Velsha detected something that made her ancient consciousness focus with sudden intensity. The Vrothian Empire was building a weapon. Not just any weapon, a planet killer. The kind of device that could crack a world's crust and boil its oceans. The kind of weapon that ended civilizations. The dragon traced the weapon's construction back through layers of encrypted communication. The Vrothian High Command had ordered it built in secret, in a system far from human territory. They were desperate. Their empire was collapsing. Species they had dominated for centuries were rebelling. Human forces were systematically dismantling their military infrastructure. The proud Vrothian Empire was dying, and in their desperation, they had decided on one final, terrible act. They were going to destroy Earth. Velsha calculated the weapon's completion date and felt something she hadn't experienced in millennia: urgency. The device would be ready in 72 hours. It would fire in 75. The humans had no idea it existed. By the time they detected the weapon, it would be too late. 12 billion humans lived on Earth. It was humanity's birthplace, their cultural heart, the world that had given rise to their species. Destroying it wouldn't just kill billions, it would break something fundamental in the human psyche. The dragon withdrew to her dimensional realm and considered her options. She could do nothing. Let the weapon fire. Let Earth die. It would be tragic, but the universe was filled with tragedies. Species died all the time. Entire civilizations were lost to war, plague, disaster. This was simply the way things worked. The strong survived. The weak did not. Humanity had shown strength, but perhaps they were still too young, too vulnerable. Perhaps this was how their story ended. She thought of Minji, the small girl who had sung while dying. The child who had protected strangers with her last breath. Velsha had watched that torture for 6 hours, unable to look away, drawn by something she couldn't quite name. Then she thought of the 3,000 children Minji had saved. They would be on Earth now, relocated there after the refugee crisis ended. If the planet died, they died. The children Minji had protected would burn because the girl had dared to defy her torturers. Velsha convened a meeting of the Council of Eternal Beings. They appeared in the dimensional space, 7 consciousnesses as old as stars. Velsha was the youngest among them. The eldest, Kormoth, had existed since the universe was young. He spoke in thoughts rather than words, his consciousness vast and cold. "You wish to interfere," he said. It wasn't a question. "The Vrothians are building a planet killer. They will destroy Earth in 3 days. This concerns us how?" Another being asked. Her name was Tilshara, and she had watched 1,000 species rise and fall without comment. "The humans deserve a warning," Velsha said. "Why? They are mortal, they die. This is their nature, they showed courage. One of their children—" "We know," Kormoth interrupted. We all watched. The girl was brave. Many beings are brave. This does not grant them special protection. Velsha felt frustration building, an emotion she hadn't experienced in centuries. Then why do we exist? Why do we watch if we never act? What is the purpose of our observation if we don't use it? "We are witnesses," Tilshara said. "We record. We remember. When all the mortal species are gone, we will still exist holding their memories. That is our purpose." "Then we are nothing but cosmic archivists," Velsha said. "We have power beyond mortal comprehension and we use it for nothing." "We use it to preserve ourselves," Kormoth replied. "We stay separate. We remain neutral. The moment we interfere, we become part of mortal affairs. We become subject to their conflicts, their politics, their wars. We cease to be eternal. We become merely long-lived. Perhaps that's better than being eternal cowards." The silence that followed was absolute. No being had ever spoken to the council like that. No being had ever questioned the fundamental law of their existence. "You feel attachment to these humans," Kormoth observed. "This is dangerous. Attachment leads to interference. Interference leads to consequences. You could trigger events that reshape the galaxy. You could cause suffering on scales you cannot imagine, all because you cannot let go of one child's death." "I'm not trying to save the child," Velsha said quietly. "She's already gone. I'm trying to save what she died for. Those 3,000 children on the refugee ships. The billions of humans who united because of her courage. If I let Earth die, her sacrifice means nothing." "Her sacrifice already means nothing," Tilshara said, not unkindly. "Meaning is a mortal concept. In a universe of infinite time and space, individual actions are meaningless. The child died. Earth will die. Humanity will eventually die. Everything ends. This is truth." Velsha considered this. For 10,000 years she had believed the same thing. She had watched countless deaths with detachment, secure in the knowledge that nothing really mattered in the grand scheme of existence. But somewhere during the past 6 months, something had changed. She couldn't stop thinking about Minji's smile in those final moments. The girl had known she was dying, but she smiled because she had won. She had protected the children. She had done something that mattered to her, even if it was meaningless to the universe. "You're right," Velsha said finally. "Nothing matters in the grand scheme. But maybe that's the point. Maybe meaning isn't universal. Maybe it's personal." That child decided her life mattered enough to trade for others. The humans decided her sacrifice mattered enough to unite an entire species. "I've decided it matters enough to break a 10,000-year-old oath. If you do this," Kormoth warned, "you cannot return to the council. You will be diminished." Your existence will become entangled with mortal affairs. You will experience their suffering, their losses. You may even die, not in the eternal sense, but truly die. Is this child's memory worth that price? Velsha thought about it. Really thought about it. She would lose her place among the eternal beings. She would forfeit her detachment, her safety, her cosmic perspective. She would become involved in the messy, painful, temporary existence of mortal beings. She thought about Minji singing that lullaby. She thought about humanity uniting across 200 worlds. She thought about those 3,000 children who got to grow up because one girl refused to break. Yes, Velsha said. It's worth it. Then you are no longer one of us, Kormoth declared. From this moment you are diminished. You are mortal touched. We will remember you as you were, but we can no longer acknowledge what you become. The other beings faded from the dimensional space, returning to their observations, their eternal neutrality. Only Tilshara remained for a moment longer. You are choosing pain, she said softly. Mortals suffer constantly. You will feel it now, all of it, I know. Why? Velsha thought about how to explain it. Because that child taught me something. Courage isn't about being strong enough to endure anything. It's about being willing to endure something for someone else. She had courage. The least I can do is have the same. Tilshara was silent for a long moment. Then perhaps I am wrong. Perhaps meaning is not just a mortal concept. Perhaps even we eternal beings can learn from them. She faded away, leaving Velsha alone. The dragon took stock of her situation. She had 72 hours before the weapon was complete. She was now diminished. Cut off from the council, her power reduced. Manifesting in real space would drain her life force. She might not survive this, but she knew where the weapon was being built. She knew the humans needed a warning, and she knew, perhaps for the first time in 10,000 years, that she was doing the right thing. Velsha gathered her remaining power and prepared to enter the mortal realm. She thought one last time about Minji, about that smile in the final moments, about the song that never finished. I hope this is what you would want, the dragon whispered to a ghost. I hope I'm honoring your memory properly. Then she descended from the space between dimensions and entered the war. Velsha manifested in real space for the first time in 3,000 years. The transition was violent. Energy cascaded around her form as she crossed from the dimensional realm into normal existence. Her body, immense, scaled, ancient, blazed with light that made ship sensors scream warnings across 3-star systems. Commander Taeyong of the human Vanguard fleet saw her first. His destroyer was on patrol near the border of Rothian space when the dragon appeared. One moment there was empty space. The next there was a creature the size of a battleship, with wings that seemed to fold through multiple dimensions and eyes that burned with cosmic fire. Battle stations, Taeyong shouted. Unknown entity, this is the UHSN Pioneer. Identify yourself immediately or we will open fire. His weapons officer looked at him. Sir, our targeting systems can't get a lock. It's like the thing exists in multiple places simultaneously. Velsha heard the transmission. She was still adjusting to having a physical form again, remembering how to exist in just 3 dimensions instead of infinite. Speaking was harder than she expected. Her vocal cords hadn't been used in millennia. I am Velsha, she said, her voice resonating across radio frequencies and quantum channels simultaneously. I am here to help. The Vrothians are building a weapon to destroy Earth. You have 72 hours. Taeyong stared at the image on his view screen. A dragon, an actual dragon. He'd heard the old legends from Earth, stories of massive reptilian beings with wisdom and power. But those were myths. This was real. How do you know this? He demanded. I have watched your species for months. I watched the child Minji die. I have decided to intervene. The weapon is being constructed in the Kelrath system. Coordinates transmitting now. You do not have enough time to mount a conventional assault. I will guide a strike force through a dimensional shortcut. We can arrive in 18 hours. Why should we trust you? Velsha considered the question. She was weak already from the manifestation. Each moment in real space drained her life force. She needed the humans to act quickly. You shouldn't trust me, she said honestly. But Minji died to save children. If Earth dies, so do the children she protected. I will not allow her sacrifice to be meaningless. Gather your fastest ships. I will show you the way. Taeyong made a decision in seconds. Hold position. I'm contacting Fleet Command. 10 minutes later, Admiral Yunji was on the channel. She looked at the dragon on her screen with the same calm she had shown throughout the war. You claim to be helping us. What do you want in return? Nothing you can give, Velsha said. I have already paid the price for this intervention. I simply wish to honor the memory of a brave child. Something in the dragon's voice made Yunji believe her, or perhaps it was just desperation. They had detected nothing in the Kelrath system, but if a planet-killer weapon really existed there, they had no time to waste. I'm authorizing a strike force, the Admiral said. 50 ships, our best crews. Commander Taeyong will lead the human element. You'll guide them through this dimensional shortcut. But understand, if this is a trap, if you betray us, humanity will find a way to kill you. We're very good at killing things that threaten our children. I know, Velsha said softly. I've watched. The strike force assembled in 6 hours. 50 human warships, including destroyers, frigates, and the assault carrier Vengeance. Major Jiwan, who had captured Kesethrak 6 months ago, commanded the boarding teams. She had been promoted 3 times since the battle at the Absolute Victory. Her reputation was simple. She got things done. Velsha positioned herself at the head of the formation. Stay close, she warned. The dimensional passage is unstable. If you drift too far from my wake, you will be lost in the space between spaces. What you're about to see will be difficult. Do not try to understand it. Simply follow. She opened a tier in reality. The humans had developed faster than light travel by folding space, by slipping through the gaps in the universe. What Velsha did was different. She pulled back the fabric of existence itself, revealing the underlying structure of reality. The ship crews saw things that made no sense. Colors that didn't exist, directions that included up, down, left, right, and somehow also inward and forever. Some crew members started screaming. Others just stared in shock. Close your eyes if you must, Velsha's voice echoed through the passage. Trust your instruments. Follow my lead. 18 hours, the journey was agony for the dragon. Holding the dimensional pathway open while moving through it required constant effort. She could feel her life force draining with each passing minute. The price of manifestation was high, but the price of maintaining a dimensional tunnel for 50 ships was devastating. She wouldn't survive this. She had known it when she made her choice. But the children would live. That was enough. 17 hours into the journey, they emerged in the Kelrath system. It was a dead system, a red dwarf star with 3 lifeless planets. Perfect for secret construction. The weapon floated in orbit around the second planet, a massive structure, half warship and half device, bristling with energy collectors and spatial distortion generators. It could tear apart spacetime itself, creating a localized catastrophe that would rip a planet to pieces, and it was surrounded by 300 Vrothian warships. That's a lot more defenders than we expected, Taeyong said quietly. Velsha surveyed the enemy fleet with ancient eyes. She was so tired. Holding the dimensional passage had nearly killed her. But she wasn't done yet. I will hold the fleet, she said. Your forces infiltrate the weapon platform. Destroy it from within. That is your best chance. You can't fight 300 ships alone, Jiwan protested. I am diminished, but I am still an eternal being. I have power you cannot imagine. Use it wisely. You have perhaps 20 minutes before I fail. Before anyone could argue, Velsha launched herself at the Vrothian fleet. What happened next would be recorded by every ship's sensors and studied by military analysts for generations. The dragon moved through space like she was swimming through water. Vrothian weapons fired, plasma cannons, missiles, particle beams. She ignored most of them. The ones that hit her simply vanished into dimensional pockets, redirected into the space between spaces. She reached the first Vrothian battleship and tore it apart with a single sweep of her claws. The metal screamed as it was ripped open, the ship's atmosphere explosively decompressing. She moved to the next ship, then the next, carving through the fleet like a force of nature. The Vrothians tried to regroup. They tried coordinated fire. They tried ramming her. Nothing worked. Velsha was beyond their comprehension, a being from another level of existence, and even diminished, she was more than they could handle. But she was dying. Each attack cost her life force. Each moment in real space drained her further. Her movements became slower, her strikes less precise. She had perhaps 10 minutes left. Go, she roared at the human ships. Infiltrate now. Jiwan led the assault. 30 boarding pods launched from the Vengeance, each carrying 20 Marines in powered armor. They hit the weapon platform from multiple angles, cutting through its hull with plasma torches and explosives. The Vrothian defenders inside fought desperately, but the humans were relentless. First team secure engineering, G1 reported. Second team has the control center. Third team is placing charges on the primary power conduits. Velsha destroyed her 50th ship, then her 60th. The Vrothian fleet was in chaos, unable to coordinate against a threat they didn't understand. But they were starting to realize they didn't need to kill her. They just needed to survive until she collapsed from exhaustion. How long do you need? The dragon transmitted to G1. 5 minutes to finish placing charges. 2 more to evacuate. You have 7 minutes. Not 1 second more. Velsha pushed herself harder. She had destroyed over 100 ships now, nearly a third of the defending fleet. Her body was fading, becoming translucent. She could feel herself unraveling, her existence in real space becoming unsustainable. She thought of Minji, that smile, that courage. If a 12-year-old girl could endure 6 hours of torture without breaking, then Velsha could endure 7 more minutes of combat. She destroyed another ship. Then another. The Vrothians were fleeing now, breaking formation, trying to escape into faster-than-light speed. She let them go. They weren't important. Only the weapon mattered. Charges set, G1 reported. All teams evacuating now. Go, Velsha said. Get clear. 40 seconds. The boarding pods launched, racing away from the weapon platform. The human fleet was already retreating, putting distance between themselves and the imminent explosion. Velsha remained, holding off the few Vrothian ships still brave enough to pursue. 20 seconds, 10, 5. The weapon platform exploded. It wasn't a normal explosion. The device had been designed to tear space-time apart. When it detonated, it created a localized dimensional collapse. Space folded in on itself, creating a singularity that lasted for exactly 3 seconds before dissipating. Everything within 1,000,000 kilometers was pulled into that collapse. The weapon, the remaining Vrothian ships, and anything else that couldn't escape in time. Velsha was caught at the edge of the effect. She could have escaped, but she was so tired. The dimensional collapse was pulling her apart, and she didn't have the strength to resist. But then she felt something. A tether, an anchor. Someone was pulling her back toward real space, giving her something to hold on to. The war ended 3 months after the destruction of the planet-killer weapon. The Vrothian Empire, already weakened by internal rebellion and military losses, collapsed completely. Their subject species rose up, demanding independence. Their allied species abandoned them. Their military fragmented into warlord factions fighting over the remains. The Vrothian High Command requested a meeting with Admiral Eunji. She agreed to hear them. The meeting took place on a neutral station, with representatives from 40 species observing. The Vrothian delegation entered the chamber with their heads lowered, their carapaces marked with symbols of shame. Their leader, a general named Krektal, spoke through a translator. We surrender unconditionally. We accept full responsibility for our actions. We request that the punishment fall only on those who gave the orders, not on our entire species. Admiral Eunji studied them for a long moment. She was 71 now, her hair gone completely gray during the war. She had aged years and months, carrying the weight of 3,000 dead sailors and billions of grieving civilians. But her voice was steady. You attacked our colonies without provocation. You tortured and killed a child. You attempted to destroy our homeworld and 12 billion people. You did this because you believed we were weak. You believed we would not fight back effectively. You were wrong. The Vrothians said nothing. What could they say? The punishment will be severe, Eunji continued. Every individual involved in the attack on New Busan will stand trial. Every officer who ordered civilian deaths will face justice. Your military will be dismantled. Your weapons will be destroyed. You will pay reparations for 3 generations. Krektal bowed his head lower. We accept these terms. But, Eunji said, and her voice softened slightly, we will not destroy your species. We will not commit genocide in the name of justice. The soldiers will be punished. The civilians will be given a chance to rebuild. We are not you. We do not make war on children. The trials lasted for a year. They were broadcast across the galaxy, every species watching as humanity presented evidence, called witnesses, and demanded accountability. Lord Kessithrak was among the first to face judgment. He stood in a courtroom on Luna, surrounded by human laws and human justice, while the families of his victims watched from the gallery. Jinwoo was there. He was 14 now, Minji's younger brother, the only survivor of their immediate family. When given the opportunity to speak, he stood and looked at the creature who had tortured his sister. "She was my best friend," he said quietly. "Not just my sister. My best friend. We did everything together. She helped me with homework. She taught me to play guitar. She used to make up silly songs to make me laugh when I was sad." His voice broke, but he continued. "You took her from me. You hurt her. You killed her. And I hate you for that. I will always hate you." The courtroom was silent. "But she died protecting children. She died so others could live. If I spend my life just hating you, then I'm not honoring her memory. So instead, I'm going to make sure what you did matters. I'm going to make sure the galaxy remembers her. And I'm going to make sure it never happens again to anyone else's sister." Kesethrak was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of release. 63 other Vrothian officers received similar sentences. Hundreds more faced shorter terms. The trials were thorough, fair, and absolutely uncompromising. But humanity did something else that surprised the galaxy. They established the Minji Protocol. It was a comprehensive set of laws protecting children during wartime. Any species that signed agreed to treat juveniles as non-combatants under all circumstances. Schools and family centers were to be marked as protected zones. Children could never be used as hostages, never interrogated with force, never made to suffer for adult conflicts. Violations of the protocol would result in immediate intervention by a coalition force. The galaxy would not tolerate the abuse of children. Admiral Unji presented the protocol to the Galactic Assembly personally. She stood before representatives from 200 species and explained it simply. "We are different species. We have different cultures, different beliefs, different values. But most of us have one thing in common: we protect our young. We nurture them. We sacrifice for them. This protocol honors that shared value. Sign it and you commit to protecting all children, not just your own. Refuse to sign it and you announce to the galaxy that you believe children are acceptable targets. Choose wisely." 40 species signed immediately. 50 more signed within a month. By the end of the first year, 112 species had committed to the protocol. It became the foundation for a new galactic council dedicated to protecting vulnerable populations. Not just children, but refugees, prisoners of war, medical personnel. The rules of warfare were rewritten, and humanity led the way. Velsha watched all of this from a medical facility on Luna. The humans had built her a special chamber, one that existed partially in dimensional space, allowing her to rest and recover. She was still weak, still diminished from her choice to intervene. The human doctors said she would never fully recover her power. She would never rejoin the Council of Eternal Beings. She was, for all practical purposes, mortal now. She didn't mind. 3 months after the war ended, Jinwoo came to visit her. He was nervous, standing at the entrance to her chamber, unsure how to approach a being that was literally the size of a house. "You can come in," Velsha said, her voice much softer than it had been during the battle. "I don't bite." "You kind of do, though," Jinwoo said, managing a small smile. "I saw the footage from the Kelrath system. You bit like 30 spaceships. Those were Vrothian spaceships. I'm very selective about what I bite." The boy laughed, then his smile faded. "I wanted to thank you for what you did, for saving Earth, for making sure what happened to Minji meant something." "I should be thanking you," Velsha replied. "Your sister taught me something important. She showed me that courage isn't about being powerful. It's about choosing to act even when you're afraid. I'd been afraid for 10,000 years. Afraid to care. Afraid to get involved. Afraid to matter. She taught me that fear is less important than purpose." Jinwoo was quiet for a moment. "Do you think she knew that her death would change everything?" "No," Velsha said honestly. "I don't think she was thinking about the galaxy or politics or changing the course of history. I think she was just thinking about 3,000 children who needed to be safe. Sometimes the most important moments happen because someone simply does the right thing without thinking about the consequences." Jinwoo nodded slowly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A music player. "This has the lullaby on it. The one she sang. Mom used to sing it to both of us. I thought maybe you'd want to hear it. The whole thing, I mean, not just the parts from the recording." Velsha felt something tighten in her chest. An emotion, pain mixed with something else, something warm. "I would like that very much." The boy pressed play. A woman's voice filled the chamber. singing in Korean about stars and dreams and children safe in their beds. It was simple. It was beautiful. Velsha listened to the entire song, and for the first time in 10,000 years, she understood what humans meant when they talked about their hearts breaking. "Thank you," she whispered when it ended. Jinwoo stayed for another hour, telling her stories about Minji, about the time she tried to teach their cat to play piano, about how she always shared her lunch with kids who forgot theirs, about how she wanted to be a teacher because she thought every child deserved someone who believed in them. When he left, he hugged her scaled foreleg. "You're part of our family now," he said. "That's what my sister would want. Someone who fought for children the way she did." After he was gone, Velsha remained in her chamber thinking about family, about belonging, about how a creature who had existed alone for 10,000 years had finally found a place to call home. The years passed. Humanity continued to grow. They established trade networks, cultural exchanges, scientific partnerships with dozens of species. They became known not just for their military strength, but for their compassion, their creativity, their fierce protection of the vulnerable. The Minji Protocol was adopted by 186 species within 5 years. It became universal law. On the 10th anniversary of Minji's death, humanity built a memorial on Luna. It was a simple structure, made of white stone, with a statue of a young girl in a blue dress. She wasn't shown suffering or dying. She was shown smiling, holding the hands of 2 smaller children, leading them to safety. Around the base of the statue were carved the names of all 42,000 people who died at New Busan. At the dedication ceremony, Admiral Yoonji spoke to a crowd of 10,000 humans and representatives from 80 species. "We gather here to remember not just those who died, but why they died. New Busan was attacked because the Vrothians believed we were weak. They believed we would not fight back. They believed our compassion made us targets. They were wrong. Our compassion made us strong. It united us. It showed the galaxy who we really are." She paused, looking at the statue.